Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome to the news in brief and happy Eid. This evening, one U.S. soldier and two Iraqis were wounded in two attacks in central Baghdad. A missile fell near the U.S. headquarters in Iraq, creating a massive hole in the middle of the road. The U.S. administrative headquarters was previously attacked by mortar shells several times. Meanwhile, a new videotape captured by an amateur and received by a French journalist shows images of masked armed men launching a missile targeting a DHL cargo plane. The images show a surface-to-air missile targeting the plane while it was attempting to land at the Baghdad airport. The videotape was left in front of one of Baghdad's hotels by an unidentified person. It was to be delivered by a French journalist. The Saudi security forces foiled a car bomb attack in Riyadh. A spokesman from the Saudi Ministry of Interior Affairs stated that there were clashes with the terrorists, resulting in the death of two of them. The vehicle that was prepared for the attack was also confiscated. A source from the Yemeni Interior Ministry said that the security forces were able to arrest the second-in-command of the Al-Qaeda organization in Yemen, Muhammad Hamdi al-Azal, also known as Abu Asem al-Maki. He was arrested in a home west of Sinai after officials surrounded the home he was in, forcing him to turn himself over to authorities. A statement released by the Yemeni Interior Ministry indicates that he was arrested following an intelligence operation that lasted for several months. Britain warned of possible new attacks in Istanbul and Ankara and advised its citizens not to travel to Turkey unless absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, the Turkish National Security Court accused 9 recently arrested suspects of being members in illegal organizations and of involvement in last week's explosions in Istanbul. Here at Manar channel in Beirut, we wish you all the Muslims of the world a happy Eid Al Fitr and many blessed returns. Now, Muslims across the world celebrated the first day of Eid Al Fitr. Mosques were filled with the believers who came to the Eid prayers. The mosque imams took advantage of the gatherings to display their estimation to the prevailing situations. For his part, Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Fadlallah alluded to the challenges facing the Islamic Ummah, citing 2 primary ones, the hegemonic drive and the backwardness, which attempts to impose itself on the Muslim through certain unacceptable patterns of thinking. The Lebanese Republic Mufti Sheikh Muhammad Qabbani stated that Islam as a religion and not terrorism or extremism became the target of the U.S. Hezbollah Shura Council member Sheikh Muhammad Yazbik called on all the Muslims to unite in their confrontation against the hegemonic forces of the world. In New York, the Iraqi Governing Council has asked the UN Security Council for a new resolution formally abolishing the US-led occupation when a provisional government is elected in June. And the head of the Central Command, General John Abizaid, said Tuesday, American military presence will no longer be needed once the government can guarantee the country's security. Abu Zaid said there will be no respite in U.S. military operations during the Eid Al Fitr holiday. In New York, the Iraqi Governing Council has asked the UN Security Council for a new resolution formally abolishing the US-led occupation when a provisional government is elected in June. Current IGC Chairman Jalal Talabani outlined the request in a letter to the Security Council released Monday, detailing the agreement with the Occupation Coalition Provisional Authority for the handover of power to Iraqis. Talabani said a new resolution would be needed to cover the situation at the end of June 2004, when a provisional government, Iraq's first since the fall of Saddam Hussein, is due to be elected. On the ground, two loud blasts heard in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad early Tuesday were the result of controlled explosions by American occupation troops. 3 Iraqi fighters were gunned down Monday night by U.S. troops near the western Iraqi hotspot town of Fallujah as they planted a roadside bomb on a highway's central reservation. 3 Iraqis were wounded Tuesday, 2 of them in serious condition, when a booby-trapped bomb planted at the entrance of the main hotel in the northern city of Kirkuk went off. In the western city of Ramadi, 3 anti-U.S. fighters have been killed and a 4th wounded, along with a U.S. soldier during raids. A U.S. soldier was wounded in a bomb attack on his convoy in the main northern city of Mosul, a U.S. military spokeswoman said, and a member of the Iraqi Civil Defense Force was wounded when 2 unknown assailants called him a traitor before stabbing him in the hotspot town of Baquba. U.S. troops also shot dead a person in a vehicle that was trying to ram a checkpoint and killed another person who attacked them north of Baghdad, according to U.S. military spokesman. An explosion went off Monday near a U.S. military patrol in the northern Habbaniya district of Baghdad, near a disused tobacco factory used as a camp by the U.S. forces. Around 1,500 U.S. occupation troops took part in a sweep for weapons and bomb-making equipment in and around the town of Udain near Baquba on Monday. The U.S. governor of Iraq, Paul Bremer, said Tuesday after a series of deadly attacks that Saddam Hussein loyalists are trying to terrorize Iraqis in a switch of tactics.
The security situation has changed. In the past, attacks against coalition forces were predominant. Now, terrorist attacks against Iraqis are occurring regularly. This is a repugnant but not unexpected tactic. The former regime loyalists and jihadists have always pursued a policy of intimidation. They have failed to intimidate the coalition. They have now begun a pattern of terrorizing innocent Iraqis in an effort to drive them away from the goal they share with the coalition, a democratic and peaceful Iraq. They will not succeed.
The head of the Central Command, General John Abizaid, said Tuesday American military presence will no longer be needed once the future Iraqi government can guarantee the country's security. One of the Middle East's biggest television news networks, Al Arabiyya, has agreed to stop reports from Iraq after the U.S.-appointed government raided its offices, banned its broadcast, and threatened to imprison the journalists. The Iraqi government accused Al Arabiyya of inciting murder for broadcasting an audio tape a week ago of a voice it said belonged to Saddam Hussein. U.S. President George W. Bush on Tuesday signed a $401 billion defense bill that boosts soldiers' pay and grieved in Colorado alongside troops mourning dozens of comrades killed in Iraq. He told cheering soldiers at Fort Carson sprawling base, which sent some 12,000 troops to Iraq as part of its largest single deployment since World War II, that the United States of America will not be intimidated by a bunch of thugs. Israel expelled 6 Palestinians out of 18 others named for expulsion from the West Bank to the Gaza Strip. As the world is turning a blind eye to this move, Palestinians fear that Israel is planning a systematic and gradual expulsion program that would comprise all Palestinians living in the West Bank.
As the world remains silent to Israel's policy of expelling Palestinians out of their land, 3 more were expelled Sunday night, just a day before the Fitr holiday started. Out of 18 Palestinians to be expelled from the West Bank to the Gaza Strip, Israel till now expelled 6 Palestinians. It claims that some of them are linked to Palestinian resistance groups, while others are relatives to Palestinian self-martyrs. Samer Badr, Ahmad Mishkah, and Ala Hassouna have been kept in dark cells for more than 40 days in separate areas close to Israeli settlements.
We were 18 detainees waiting for an unknown fate. Finally, we ended up being expelled. Of course, life in prison is very bad because of the food, the detention situation, and the prison administration. We lack the minimum standards applied to any detainee in any other prison.
The expelled were not put on trial at Israeli courts, rather they were detained for months and finally they were subject to false trial.
The
Israeli government formed a negotiation committee at the same day that another group of detainees was being expelled. It's a mistake to think that the Fox has values. This is the policy of the Israeli government. It's an episode of an Israeli series of suppression, killing, displacement, and expulsion of Palestinian people.
Palestinian governmental organizations which defended the 3 expelled Palestinians labeled the act as a failure by Israel to display the real reasons for such a decision. Till now, the number of those expelled is 46.
The policy of expulsion that the Israeli government is conducting is a collective punishment against the ones whom it accused of standing behind so-called terrorist operations. The fact is that those who were expelled since the first expulsion of Palestinians from the Church of Nativity, there were no legal or moral justification against those expelled.
Palestinians feared that the absence of world body's criticism would give it a go-ahead signal to expel more Palestinians, a move which contradicts Israel's claims that it is seeking a political solution with the Palestinians.
In Iraq, the United States occupation forces ruined the joy of Al-Eid for the Iraqis, not taking into consideration the significance of this religious holiday. Disregarding the feelings of Iraqis, the chief of the United States Central Command, General John Abu Zaid, refused to stop the United States operations in Iraq in observance of Eid Al Fitr. In response to a question asked by a journalist concerning the calls made by a number of Iraqi religious clergies demanding the United States forces to halt their raid campaigns for 1 week, General Abu Zaid, who attended a press conference in Baghdad with the United States Civil Administrator Paul Bremer, responded sharply saying, "No." Abu Zaid reiterated that his forces will continue to pressure the resistance, thus validating the operations carried out by his forces, raiding the homes of Iraqis in different areas, especially during the later hours of the night, evacuating women and children from their homes and leaving these terrified people outside until the morning. In one of these operations, the occupation forces arrested 14 Iraqis in Kirkuk. At least 100 soldiers carried out the campaign using armored vehicles and 2 helicopters. People in Baghdad celebrated this occasion amid tight security measures, waking up this morning to the sounds of strong explosions, rattling windows, because the United States forces detonated an ammunition in the city center. This evening, loud explosions were heard around Baghdad. Sirens went off at the United States headquarters, followed by an announcement ordering those working there to seek shelter, saying that these explosions are not part of the training. Amid these deteriorating security conditions in Iraq, the Iraqis continue to celebrate Eid Al Fitr, demanding an end to the occupation and calling for Iraq's unity. A statement repeated in the Eid speech given by many imams at the various mosques. Meanwhile, the United States forces killed 3 Iraqis on a highway near Fallujah. However, 2 others managed to escape after planting an explosive device on the road. In the northern city of Kirkuk, a bomb exploded in front of a palace hotel, wounding 2 security guards and a hotel employee, while also damaging windows and the entrance to the hotel, where American businessmen, journalists, and other civilians were staying. to Arab and international news, starting with Palestine. The Zionist occupation forces prevented hundreds of Palestinians from attending prayers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and raided several Palestinian towns. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Yasser Arafat calls on Israel to implement the roadmap.
The
Zionist occupation forces continued their siege on the Palestinians while they attended Eid prayers at the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. During the Eid speech, the Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque, Sheikh Mohammed Hussein, confirmed that Eid prayers this year were conducted in an atmosphere of sadness and anticipation. The occupation forces prevented hundreds of worshippers from reaching the holy mosque for prayers. The Palestinian President Yasser Arafat performed Eid prayers while under siege in his headquarters in Ramallah, calling on Israel to implement the roadmap and reiterating his support to the United Nations Resolution number 1515, which included an approval of the roadmap. Arafat added that he is disappointed with the Israeli side for not complying with it, despite the fact that it was passed by the United Nations Security Council. The Russian Foreign Minister Igor Ivanov stated that his country supports Palestinian President Arafat, adding that negotiations with him must continue and rejecting U.S. and Israeli calls to boycott him. This morning, the Israeli occupation forces raided Jenin, north of the occupied West Bank, arresting 12 Palestinians as a part of a raid and arrest campaign conducted in several parts of the West Bank. Palestinian sources report that 4 people, including a woman and an Israeli soldier, were wounded during incursions in the old city in Nablus. In addition, west of the city of Rafah, the occupation soldiers opened fire at homes in Tal Sultan using heavy weapons and machine guns, wounding 2 young men.
President Hosni Mubarak expressed hope that inter-Palestinian talks to be hosted by Egypt on December 2nd will lead to a ceasefire that will permit a revival of peace talks with Israel. Speaking in Sharm el-Sheikh, the president said he hoped the talks would lead to a definitive settlement among the Palestinian factions to halt attacks on Israelis that in turn would prompt the Israeli government to stop military operations in the occupied territories. Mubarak also noted that terrorism is likely to intensify so long as what is happening in Palestine and Iraq does not end. Mubarak asserted that one cannot stop terrorist operations with force, but rather with a settlement in the Middle East and Iraq. On Iraq, the head of state described as necessary an accord signed November 15 in Baghdad between the US-appointed Iraqi Governing Council and the US-led coalition, calling for a transfer of power to the Iraqis by mid-2004. He warned that if coalition forces leave Iraq today, the situation would be chaotic, adding that there must be an administration set up first to lead the country. Mubarak was speaking after performing the Eid prayers at the start of the Muslim feast of Eid Al Fitr. Leader of Israel's opposition center-left Labour Party, Shimon Peres, urged the Israeli Prime Minister on Tuesday to prove his sincerity with a pull-out from the Gaza Strip. Peres said most Israelis were unconvinced by plans being floated by Sharon to eventually dismantle some isolated Jewish settlements and draw the borders of a Palestinian state if a US-backed peace roadmap fails. Peres said that if Sharon was serious, he must back his words with actions and immediately pull troops and settlers out of Gaza. The vague initiative, dubbed the Sharon Plan by Israeli media, has triggered sharp criticism both from Palestinian President Yasser Arafat and Sharon's own rightist Likud party. Peres called for a swift return to negotiations, a freeze on settlement expansion, and rerouting of Israel's West Bank barrier to avoid cutting deep into Palestinian land. He described newly installed Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Correa as a partner they can talk to and urged Sharon to ease Palestinian hardship to help pave the way for a summit. The United States yielded to Europe's Big Three, Britain, Germany and France, in a compromise UN draft resolution that condemns Iran's nuclear program but stops short of taking the issue to the UN Security Council for possible sanctions. After 5 days of intense discussions with US diplomats, The three main EU countries, known as the Euro 3, filed the draft late Monday with the Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. The resolution is expected to be adopted by consensus by the IAEA's 35-nation Board of Governors when it meets Wednesday, resuming a meeting broken off last Friday due to the stalemate. Iran's ambassador to the IAEA, Ali Akbar Salehi, who had said that taking the issue to the UN Security Council could set off an international crisis, said that his country was pleased with the draft resolution. He added that Iran was looking for a peaceful resolution for the issue. Georgian MPs elected in the 1999 parliament voted on Tuesday for early presidential elections to be held on January 4th. Of those present, 160 MPs voted for the date, and the remaining 9 MPs chose not to vote. Before the parliament convened on Tuesday, an opposition leader and likely successor to Shevardnadze, Mikhail Saakashvili, had strongly urged MPs to set the election date. But in spite of the appeal, the parliament put off a vote on the date for early parliamentary elections until Wednesday. Those elections will decide the number of seats held by each party in the new legislature. Saakashvili has previously warned of the continuing potential for violence in spite of the peaceful outcome of the 3-week political standoff between Shevardnadze and the opposition. Eid Al Fitr, the 3-day feast marking the end of the fasting month of Ramadan, is being celebrated by Muslims worldwide. In this report, we look at how the occasion is being celebrated in Egypt.
Eid Al Fitr, the 3-day feast marking the end of a month-long fast during Ramadan, is celebrated here with great enthusiasm and fervor. Toys and gifts for the children are part of the festivities. And this year, toy shops have special Eid promotions to attract Eid shoppers. This mother of 2 says she's on her way to buy toys for her 2 daughters. They must also wear new clothes during the Eid, she says. I wear new shoes during Eid, and my grandmother gives me the Arabiyya, says this little girl. Arabiyya is a gift of money given to children on the occasion of the feast. Wearing new clothes is a must for all members of the family, especially the children. Another Eid tradition is the kahk, special sugar-coated cookies consumed in great quantities during Eid Al Fitr. Confectionery stores are competing with attractive displays, decorated windows, special promotions and colorful packaging. The habit of gorging on sweets and delicacies acquired by many during the fasting month continues into the Eid holiday. This customer has ordered several kilos of kahk for the big family get-together on the first day of Eid. A gift of gold as a token of love for a near and dear one, or perhaps a bouquet of flowers to say Eid Saeed. What better way to greet a friend or relative, asks this vendor. Besides exchanging greetings and gifts during Eid, the feast is a time for family outings and fun. Many take advantage of the holiday to cruise down the Nile or visit any of the city's attractions, including the Cairo Tower. A special treat for cinema goers, new releases out for the Eid holiday. Whichever way you choose to greet others this Eid, whether you choose to say Eid Saeed with a gift of gold, flowers, kahk, or simply a greeting card, make sure that you have a happy and blessed Eid. Shahira Amin for Nile Cafe.
As the Eid holiday arrives, Palestinians continue to live in an atmosphere of sadness because of the continuous Israeli attacks, closures, and economic oppression. The camera of Al Alam television explored the streets of Gaza as Palestinians received the Eid. The Eid holiday brings joy and happiness everywhere in the world, except Palestine. To the Palestinians, Eid has become an occasion to pray and visit close relatives, and give sympathy to the martyrs' families and their children. The Palestinians are united and support each other with the little money that they have during this difficult time. The Israeli occupation is causing them a great deal of suffering.
No child, man or woman can enjoy the Eid because of this suffocating occupation. We do not have Eid. May God help us with our difficult situation. People are going through a very difficult time because of these closures and the Israeli oppression of the Palestinian people. These accumulated effects are affecting the Palestinian people. People are walking through the markets, but they have no money to buy anything. They can only window shop. How can we celebrate the holiday while people continue to be martyred in Rafah city and everywhere in Gaza? The blood of martyrs is in every piece of land in Gaza. People live in a very sad and pessimistic atmosphere.
The Eid comes this year after the Palestinians have already marched in the funerals of more than 3,000 martyrs. More than 50,000 people were injured. A large percentage of them has been permanently handicapped. Thousands of homes were destroyed, hundreds of thousands of trees were bulldozed, and tens of thousands of Palestinians are still imprisoned in the occupation jails. Hundreds of thousands of family providers have been unemployed for the last 3 years. The resistance and courage is very unique. They consider their difficult situation, shortage of water, food, and money, as a test from God.
The political, security, and economic situations are all linked together. The Palestinian society is suffering from unemployment. As you can see, the market is empty. Our situation is very difficult. There is no business. The economic and political situation is bankrupt.
Our wounds have not yet healed. They are still bleeding. This Eid comes amid bloodshed, sadness, and demolished homes. People who lost their homes are now living in tents or live homeless on the streets. This Eid is not a true holiday.
The Palestinians put themselves on the front lines to defend the Islamic holy sites, but they receive little help from their brothers. International organizations and different governments agreed to the demands made by those who say that they are spreading democracy and human rights to stop humanitarian aid and freeze charity funds and banks, causing more suffering to orphans, martyrs' families, and the poor who already suffer from the war of starvation. All that is justified by what they call a war on terrorism. The Eid comes while the Palestinians are suffering from economic oppression, closures, and murders. Mustafa Abdaladi, Al-Alam Television, Gaza, Palestine.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.